Hey guys, tonight we step into a kitchen so old that even the walls seem to exhale flour. The air is warm, golden, and gently smoky, the kind of warmth that settles over your shoulders like a soft blanket. It wraps around you the moment you open your eyes. You're standing inside a medieval village bakehouse, and the first thing you notice is the sound. A slow, rhythmic grinding coming from a stone mill in the corner, almost like a heartbeat. Before we settle into this flour-dusted world, here's your gentle reminder. If you find these sleepy tales comforting, you can like and subscribe, but only if it feels right. And if you want to help a little more, you can even comment where you're listening from and what time it is there right now. It always amazes me to see how many people fall asleep to these stories across different time zones. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The bakehouse around you looks nothing like a modern kitchen. There's no stainless steel, no timers, no anxiety about preheating. Just an uneven stone oven glowing like a sunrise trapped in a cave. Sacks of grains sit piled near the wall. The grains are coarse, colorful, and oddly beautiful. Golds, browns, dusty reds. Nothing like the uniform white flour bags at supermarkets. You reach down and scoop a handful of kernels. They feel alive in your palm, rough, textured, each one slightly different. A medieval baker, a woman with flour streaked across her cheeks like pale war paint, gives you a warm smile without breaking rhythm. She kneads a dense dough on a wooden board, leaning into the movement with the practiced grace of someone who knows that bread isn't just food here. It's survival. It's tradition. It's the quiet heartbeat of the entire village. She doesn't speak, but you feel her thoughts settle into the room like a whisper. Bread is life. And she's not exaggerating. Historians estimate that in some medieval European regions, bread could make up 60 to 80% of a person's daily calories. Imagine that. Almost every part of your energy, every step you took, every chore you completed, powered by bread. But not the bread you know today. Not the fluffy, stretchy, hyper-processed loaves that crumble into sugar the moment they touch your tongue. This bread was something else. Something heavier, richer, more alive. You glance at the dough she's kneading. It's darker than modern dough, flecked with bran, seeds, and tiny specks of crushed grain. It isn't smooth. It isn't uniform. It rebels against the idea of perfection and somehow becomes perfect because of it. You move closer to the stone mill. The grinding wheel turns slowly, pushed by a wooden handle and a young boy no older than 10. His sleeves are rolled up, and his movements are steady. He grinds the grains little by little, preserving the oils, fibers, and nutrients locked inside the kernel. There's a smell too, nutty, warm, a little grassy. Flour, but real flour. Flour with a soul. A strange thought crosses your mind. Modern flour almost feels like an imposter compared to this. But the reasons why, those will unfold later. You watch as flour dust drifts through the beams of sunlight like tiny golden snowflakes. Each particle catches light in a cheerful shimmer. It's no wonder illuminators painted halos the same color. Medieval kitchens probably looked like workshops of edible stardust. The baker motions toward the oven, inviting you to feel the heat radiating from it. When you place your hand near the opening, a soft, dry warmth caresses your skin. It's comforting, sleepy, almost lulling. You could sit here for hours, just watching embers glow and dough rise. Then she does something odd. She breaks off a piece of dough, presses it flat, and hands it to you raw. You blink. She nods. Medieval people often ate dough to test its quality. A strange practice, maybe even questionable by today's food safety standards, but they believed it showed whether the flour was fresh or the fermentation healthy. Historians still argue whether this was safe wisdom or just superstition. But here, in this room, it feels normal, part of a rhythm older than most languages. As you take a small bite, you're surprised. It's tangy, bright, alive with the beginnings of fermentation. Your tongue tingles slightly, as if tiny bubbles are dancing across it. And suddenly, you understand something essential. Medieval bread begins long before baking. It begins in the mill, in the grain, in the sourdough culture passed down like a living family member. A monk enters quietly from a side door, carrying a wooden bowl with a bubbling starter inside, a colony of wild yeasts and bacteria that medieval bakers treated like treasure. Some monasteries guarded their starters for centuries. Some believed the yeast was a blessing from God. Others joked that it was a mischievous creature that needed constant feeding. All of them, though, agreed on one thing. Without fermentation, grains were nearly impossible to digest. As the monk stirs the starter, the baker folds it into her dough. There's something ceremonial about it. Not dramatic, not theatrical, just deeply intentional. You feel like you're watching a soft, everyday miracle. The smell in the room deepens. Warm, tangy, comforting. You breathe slowly. You feel your shoulders loosen. And something inside you settles. A gentle heaviness, but a peaceful one. Maybe this is why people always gathered around ovens at night. Not just for heat, but for calm, for community, for the sense that something nourishing was happening right in front of them. A gentle cliffhanger forms as the baker places the shaped loaves into the oven. The bread that will come out of this glowing stone chamber will be nothing like the bread you know today. And the reasons why modern bread makes so many people sick, those reasons begin right here in this medieval room. In what it had, and in what today's bread lost. You settle onto a low wooden stool near the warmth, letting the soft glow wrap around you like an early dream. This is only the beginning. You're still sitting near the warmth of the medieval oven when a soft breeze slips through the wooden door. It carries the earthy scent of freshly harvested grain, not flour this time, but whole kernels. You stand and follow the aroma outside, stepping into a medieval field bathed in late afternoon light. The air feels crisp, gentle, and just a little sweet, as if the land itself is breathing out stories. A farmer waves you over. He's wearing a rough wool tunic patched at the elbows, and his hands are stained the color of soil, the kind of stains that don't wash out because they've sunk into a lifetime's work. At his feet sits a pile of grains, and they're not all the same. Some are slender, some rounder, some almost amber red. He lifts a handful toward you and lets them drift through his fingers like tiny falling suns. These, he seems to say without speaking, are older than empires. You kneel beside him and pick up a few kernels. Immediately you notice something strange. They're nothing like the modern wheat you're used to. They're harder, more textured. They even smell different, almost nutty, almost sweet, almost ancient. This is einkorn, one of the first domesticated grains in human history, cultivated over 10,000 years ago. You roll it between your fingers and can almost feel the centuries clinging to it. Beside it lies emmer, the grain used in ancient Egypt. The grain workers were sometimes paid with, the grain found sealed in tombs beside pharaohs. And not far from it, a darker spike of spelt, beloved in parts of medieval Germany. These aren't just crops. They're time travelers. Reminders that the human body adapted for thousands of years to these grains, not the modern hybridized varieties that didn't appear until the 20th century. A quiet thought settles over you, almost like a whisper in the wind. Maybe part of why medieval bread felt like a superfood is because the grains themselves still remembered how to nourish us. The farmer motions for you to follow him deeper into the field. You walk through rows of stalks that sway like golden rivers, listening to the soft crackle under your boots. He gently snaps a head of einkorn and shows you its structure, simple, compact, and easy for the land to support. Modern wheat, in comparison, is bigger, fluffier, engineered for high yields, and often too delicate to grow without help. Einkorn survives almost anywhere. It laughs at poor soil. It thrives where modern wheat would collapse. It's a grain with attitude. You can't help but smile. The farmer then points to a cluster of emmer and raises his eyebrows, as if asking whether you know its claim to fame. You nod, because who hasn't heard the famous debate about what the first loaves of bread in history were made from? Historians still argue whether the earliest breads came from emmer or wild barley. But here, in this medieval moment, the argument doesn't matter. What matters is the richness inside every kernel, the fiber, the minerals, the carotenoids that give einkorn its golden glow. There's another curiosity he shares without words. Medieval people didn't strip away the bran. They didn't bleach the grain. They didn't remove the germ, the most nutritious part. Every loaf began with the full grain, which meant every loaf carried the full life of the grain. You pick up another handful and close your eyes, imagining the microbiome-friendly feast these ancient grains provided. Slow carbs, long energy, gentle digestion, no strange gut reactions, no insulin spikes, no ultra-refined dust masquerading as flour. These grains feel honest. As you stand, the sun shifts, and the wheat heads shimmer in bright, high-contrast gold, the kind of light medieval painters exaggerated in manuscripts, capturing fields like seas of molten metal. The farmer leads you toward a small shed, where bundles of grains hang from the ceiling like dried bouquets. The colors are astonishing. Modern wheat fields look uniform. This medieval shed looks like a painter's palette. Ochres, russets, pale yellows, deep bronze. You run your hand along a bundle of spelt. It's rough and unpolished, with a husk so tight that it protects the grain naturally for pests. Modern wheat rarely has this shield. Farmers today rely on interventions, pesticides, treatments, processing shortcuts. But medieval grains? They came wearing their own armor. It's a small detail, but one of those eccentric medieval success stories that rarely makes it into textbooks. The farmer then picks up a stone and cracks open a kernel for you. Inside, the embryo glows faintly, a tiny nutrient-dense spark designed to grow an entire plant. In modern flour, that part is removed. In medieval flour, it was the heart of the loaf. You feel that difference settle deep into your thoughts. The wind picks up. The field rustles. A long, whispering sound that almost feels like an exhale. You breathe with it slowly, and your shoulders soften again. Then, without warning, the farmer gestures toward a distant hill with a seriousness that sends a small shiver through the warm air. At the top stands a lonely figure, a miller waiting beside a stone mill, silhouetted against the sky. The farmer's eyes tell you everything. The grains were powerful, but what happened on that hill made them even stronger. And you begin walking toward it, not knowing yet that the medieval mill would change everything you think you know about flour and everything you think you know about why modern bread feels so different in your body. A gentle cliffhanger settles in the air like drifting chaff. More secrets lie in that mill, and you're about to step straight into them. The hill rises gently beneath your feet as you walk toward the silhouetted figure waiting at the top. The air shifts with each step, carrying the crisp scent of cracked grain and the mineral smell of stone. When you finally reach the summit, the medieval mill stands before you, small, humble, built from uneven blocks of limestone that glow golden in the afternoon light. It looks like something carved straight out of the earth, not constructed on top of it. The miller greets you with a nod. His hands are coated in a fine dust that sparkles like crushed pearls. He motions for you to come closer, and as you do, the grinding sound you heard earlier deepens, a slow, circular rhythm that feels almost hypnotic. Two heavy stones turn against each other, and between them, ancient grains surrender themselves into flour. But not just any flour. Living flour. The miller scoops up a handful and lets it trickle through the air. It drifts slowly, lazily, catching the sunlight in bright, cheerful sparks. What surprises you most is its texture. It isn't powdery and dry like the flour you find today. It has weight, oil, warmth, a kind of softness that comes from the grain's natural nutrients. Nutrients modern processing often destroys. He gestures toward the stones, and you lean in to inspect them. The upper stone, called the runner, rotates at a gentle pace. Not fast, not frantic. Medieval mills never rushed. They preserve the grain by keeping the temperature cool, because heat kills nutrients, burns oils, and destroys the germ, the tiny heart of the grain that stores vitamins, antioxidants, and healthy fats. Modern roller mills? They spin so fast they scorch the grain. They strip away the bran and germ. They leave behind a pale, nutrient-poor dust. You run your fingers across the flour again, amazed at how alive it feels, almost warm, as if it remembers the field it came from. The miller shows you something unexpected, a small wooden drawer beneath the stones where the flour falls. Inside, you see tiny flecks of bran, gold and brown and reddish, each adding texture and depth. This was normal in medieval bread. This was welcomed. Today's flour? Bleached, strained, reduced, clean in appearance, empty in substance. A soft breeze carries some flour dust upward, swirling it into a glowing cloud. The miller smiles, and with a small, amused gesture, he traces a circle in the dust with his finger, a playful medieval superstition. He's showing you something many scholars still debate, whether millers believed the flour cloud's movement revealed the grain's health. Romantic nonsense? Maybe, but it's a charming curiosity that feels perfectly at home here. The miller sets a fresh bowl beneath the chute. Flour streams down like tiny beams of sunlight. Then he stops the mill with a simple wooden wedge and invites you to look at the stones themselves. You crouch, studying the grooves carved into their surfaces, spiraling patterns called furrows. These grooves channel the grain, crush it gently, and keep the grinding cool. It's beautiful in a way you didn't expect. Functional, yes, but artistic too, a medieval fusion of engineering and sculpture. He places your hand on the stone. It feels smooth, cool, almost living. Then he places your hand on the newly milled flour. Warm, soft, vibrant. You suddenly understand why medieval people valued stone-milled flour so fiercely. It wasn't nostalgia. It wasn't tradition for tradition's sake. It was nutrition, flavor, digestibility, energy that lasted all day. A monk once wrote that good flour fed the body as the sun feeds the land. That line echoes in your mind now. Romantic, yes, but as you breathe in the warm, nutty air of the mill, it feels true. The miller motions for you to follow him outside. He leads you behind the structure to a small wooden platform overlooking the village. From here, you can see everything. The fields below, the rooftops clustered together like patchwork, the smoke rising gently from chimneys, the distant gleam of the communal bakehouse. And you realize something quietly profound. Every loaf in that village passes through this hill. Every family depends on these turning stones. Bread wasn't just food. It was infrastructure. Medieval Europe was built, quite literally, on flour. The miller picks up a handful of modern-looking white flour from a small sack brought by a traveling merchant. He places it beside the living medieval flour. The contrast is shocking. One is vibrant, textured, full of visible life. The other is pale and lifeless, an imitation of food. You taste a pinch of each. The medieval flour tastes like seeds and sunlight. The modern flour tastes like nothing. And in that moment, something clicks. This is why medieval bread nourished people so deeply. And this is why modern bread, stripped of fiber and oils and goodness, often leaves people tired, hungry, or unwell. The miller turns the stone wool once more. You listen. The rhythmic grinding becomes almost meditative. The breeze grows softer. Your limbs feel heavier in a pleasant, sleepy way. The warm dust settles on your skin like tiny feathers. You breathe in. You breathe out, slowly. And just as your eyelids begin to dip, the miller lifts the bowl of fresh flour and gestures toward the village below. This flour is going somewhere. Somewhere warm. Somewhere important. Somewhere that will reveal even more secrets about why medieval bread was truly a superfood. A gentle cliffhanger curls around your thoughts. If the mill gave the bread its strength, the next place you're headed gave it its soul. You stand. You follow. And the journey continues. The miller walks ahead of you down the hill, carrying the bowl of warm, freshly milled flour as if it were something sacred. And in a way, it is. Because what comes next, what happens to this flour when it meets water and time, is the heart of medieval bread. The true alchemy. The miracle people rarely stop to think about. You follow him through a narrow path between cottages. Windows glow with firelight. You hear soft laughter from a nearby home, the clatter of wooden bowls, the gentle rhythm of a village settling into evening. Then the miller turns, leading you toward a small stone building tucked behind a row of gardens. This is a baker's house. Humble, warm, smelling faintly of fermentation. And something else. Something tangy. Something alive. When you step inside, the baker, a young woman this time, greets you with a smile that instantly relaxes your shoulders. Her apron is dusted with flour. Her hands are coated in dough. And next to her on the table sits a bubbling wooden bowl. You recognize it immediately. The sourdough starter. A living culture of wild yeasts and bacteria. The oldest and most loyal companions in human baking history. She lifts the cloth covering it, and a plume of warm, fruity, slightly sour aroma rises into the air. It reminds you of apples, yogurt, and sunshine trapped in dough. You feel yourself leaning closer without even meaning to. She dips a wooden spoon inside, lifts the frothy mixture, and lets it fall in slow ribbons back into the bowl. It stretches. It swirls. It wiggles with tiny bubbles, proof that it's alive. Not metaphorically alive, literally alive. And here's the thing. No two medieval starters were ever the same. Each village had its own flavor, its own microbial fingerprint. Some monasteries passed their starters down for centuries, carefully feeding them every morning like pets. Historians still argue whether certain miracle starters actually survived hundreds of years or were just lovingly recreated by each new generation. Either way, the magic remained the same. The baker gestures for you to watch. She pours some of the warm flour the miller brought into a wooden trough. Then she adds water, cold, from the well, and begins stirring gently. The mixture thickens into a pale paste. Then, with a reverence that feels almost ceremonial, she adds a scoop of the starter. The moment it touches the flour mixture, something changes. The room seems to soften. The air warms. The scent deepens. You can almost hear the microbes awakening, stretching, getting to work. The baker kneads the dough slowly, folding and pressing with rhythmic movements that feel like watching someone braid a story. She doesn't rush. Medieval bakers never did. They believed dough needed time, breath, and patience, the opposite of today's industrial processes. You touch the dough and feel heat inside it. Not oven heat, life heat. The baker then shows you something curious. A tiny pinch of a darker dough she keeps separate. She pinches off a bit and places it into a small wooden box. This is called the mother dough. Each day, she takes a piece from yesterday's batch to seed tomorrow's bread. A chain of generations. Dough is ancestry. Some medieval bakers believed the mother dough protected the village. Others believed it carried the spirit of the harvest. One text from the 13th century even claimed that losing your starter was a sign of divine displeasure. True or not, it tells you something. This wasn't just bread. It was culture, both literally and figuratively. The dough begins to rise. Slowly, softly. A rounded dome lifting toward the ceiling as if taking a long, sleepy breath. The baker places her palm on the dough and nods in approval. You do the same, and the surface feels warm, smooth, full of promise. For a moment, everything is still, quiet, comfortable. Then she turns to you with a mischievous smile and gestures for you to step closer to a second bowl. A bowl that contains dough made without fermentation. No starter. No rising, just flour and water. You touch it. It's stiff, cold, unforgiving. She tears a tiny piece of each dough, fermented and unfermented, and hands them to you. You chew the fermented one first. It's tangy, soft, aromatic. Your stomach seems to welcome it instantly. The unfermented one? Gummy, flat, heavy. Your body knows the difference even if your mind doesn't yet. This was the secret medieval people understood intuitively. Without fermentation, bread was difficult to digest. The microbes broke down the hard-to-digest parts of grain. They lowered the glycemic impact. They made minerals more absorbable. They softened gluten. They created vitamins. Modern bread, rushed through rapid industrial processes, often skips this ancient biological partnership. No wonder people struggle. The baker motions for you to place the risen dough into a proofing basket lined with linen. The linen is dusted with bran, giving it a bright, warm contrast that looks almost artistic. She shapes the dough into a neat, round loaf. scoring its surface with a wooden tool in a pattern that resembles a sunburst. She hands you the scoring tool, inviting you to make your own mark. You carve a gentle curve into the dough's surface, watching it slowly separate to reveal the soft interior beneath. It feels like drawing on a warm cloud. Then the oven door opens. A rush of heat wraps around you like a blanket fresh from a dryer. The baker slides the loaf inside. The miller nods, and the door closes with a satisfying thud. It's in that moment you realize, this is the transformation. This is where flour becomes food, where time becomes nutrition, where microbes become magic. And just as you settle into the warmth of the room, ready to rest for a moment, the baker lifts a basket from beneath the table. Inside lies a medieval loaf already baked, dark, aromatic, breathtakingly rustic. She breaks it open. Steam escapes like a soft sigh. The crumb is dense but tender. The scent is rich enough to make your eyelids grow heavy. She places a piece in your hand, and as you take the first sleepy bite, a gentle cliffhanger forms. If fermentation gave medieval bread its magic, what it did for medieval bodies was even more extraordinary. The scent of the freshly baked loaf still lingers in your senses as you step back outside, carrying the warm piece the baker placed in your hand. The night is settling gently over the village, but not in a dark or foreboding way. It's the kind of peaceful dusk where the sky glows in soft lavender and windows light up with amber warmth. People are gathering. Quiet conversations drift through the air, and everywhere you look, someone is holding bread. It's almost startling once you notice it. Bread in baskets, bread on tables, bread tucked under arms, bread cooling on windowsills like miniature suns. In this medieval world, bread isn't just a food group. It's the pillar that holds everything upright. You walk toward the village square, guided by the hum of evening routines. A monk offers you a seat beside him on a wooden bench as villagers assemble with their loaves. Men, women, children, all carrying different shapes and sizes of bread, each one reflecting its household, its hands, its place in the rhythm of the village. The monk breaks off a piece of his loaf and hands it to you. This one is heavier, darker, with a thick crust that crackles like firewood when he snaps it open. Inside, the crumb glows faintly in the torchlight. Not white, not fluffy, but dense and richly spongy. This, he murmurs, fed armies. You look down at the piece in your hand, and suddenly the history wrapped inside it becomes clear. Bread wasn't merely a convenience or a comfort. It was energy. It was strategy. It was the foundation of medieval life, powering everything from farming to warfare to long pilgrimages across continents. Some medieval European diets were astonishing in their bread dependence. Up to 70% of daily calories came from it. Imagine trying to do anything today powered almost entirely by modern supermarket bread. You'd slump by noon. But medieval bread? It carried enough nutritional weight to fuel soldiers marching across unfamiliar territory, monks copying manuscripts late into the night, peasants spending sunup to sundown in the fields. You remember a historical curiosity you once read about a 12th century French village where workers were compensated in loaves rather than coins during the busiest agricultural seasons. Bread wasn't just food, it was currency. An academic debate even lingers today around how accurately we understand medieval nutrition. Historians still argue whether bread truly supplied the majority of vitamins and minerals in the average diet, or whether vegetables and allash did more heavy lifting. But everyone agrees on one point. Medieval bread was undeniably more nutrient-dense than what most of us eat now. As you sit in the square, a young boy beside you plays with a crust of bread, pretending it's a tiny shield. His grandmother laughs and ruffles his hair, then tells him not to waste it. Every crumb, she says, is strength. Villagers begin sharing stories. A woman speaks of climbing hills with nothing but 2 slices in her pouch, keeping her full until nightfall. An old man talks about winters when bread was the thin line between survival and hunger. A soldier recalls campaigns where dark loaves were as essential as swords. Bread shaped civilizations. You're not just hearing that, you're feeling it. The monk leans closer and whispers, "Some believe bread contained the memory of the land." He smiles as if embarrassed by the romanticism, but there's truth in it. Each loaf carried the soil of the fields, the strength of the grains, the warmth of the ovens, the care of the hands that shaped it. Another villager joins the conversation, a tall man with calloused hands and a weathered face. He tells you something eccentric. In certain regions, medieval bakers would stamp loaves with symbols representing families or guilds. Not for decoration, but identification. When dozens of households baked in the same communal oven, you needed a way to know which loaf belonged to whom. Some symbols were simple lines or circles. Others were tiny works of art, flowers, animals, celestial shapes. Some of these stamps survive in museums. You imagine them now, pressed into crusts like little love notes from the past. The man pulls out a wooden mold from his bag and shows it to you. A carved sunburst pattern. He presses it lightly against his loaf and winks. "For luck," he says. The monk chuckles. Historians debate whether stamping was practical or superstitious, he adds. But here, watching it happen, it feels like both. You bite into your loaf again. The flavor is deeper than what you tasted before. Tangy from long fermentation, earthy from the whole grain, satisfying in a way that fills not just your stomach, but something more abstract, something like steadiness. You notice your breathing slow. Your shoulders loosen. Your body grows heavy with a pleasant, grounded tiredness. This bread could sustain a person through cold winters and exhausting labor. No wonder medieval societies depended on it so completely. No wonder it formed the backbone of feasts, fasts, taxes, wages, and survival. The monk points to a group of villagers carrying their loaves to the communal oven for a late bake. The flames inside glow through the arched doorway, painting the stone walls with warm gold. The scene looks almost symbolic, a community gathering not around power or politics, but around food, around nourishment. And then a small cliffhanger gently settles. This bread fed bodies, but soon you'll see how it protected them too. How medieval bread kept people stable, energetic, and surprisingly healthy. You stand, the warm loaf still in your hands, ready to follow the next thread in this ancient story. You walk with the villagers as they head back toward their homes, each one carrying a warm loaf tucked beneath an arm or balanced in a cloth-covered basket. The night deepens into a calm, blue softness, and you can feel the comforting heaviness of digesting that rustic bread. No jitters, no sudden hunger, no strange fog settling behind your forehead, just steadiness. You stop for a moment near a low stone wall, watching the glow of a bakehouse flicker through the village. A baker waves you over, inviting you inside for a lesson. Not about baking this time, but about why medieval bread fed people so gently. Inside, the air is warm and bright, the texture of the scene almost painterly. The baker, an older man with a gentle face and flour-dusted eyebrows, gestures for you to sit. He places 2 loaves on the table, one medieval, dense and dark, one modern-looking, airy and pale, brought by a recent trader. He points between the two with a knowing smile. The comparison is almost unfair. The medieval loaf feels solid, substantial. When he slices it, the crumb reveals swirls of bran and tiny flecks of grain that shimmer in the warm light. The modern loaf collapses inward like foam when touched, as though it's mostly air pretending to be bread. You take a bite of the medieval bread again. It chews slowly. It grounds you. It feels like something your body recognizes. The baker nods, pleased. He then begins gathering ingredients onto the table. Handfuls of coarse bran, whole kernels, a pinch of sourdough starter, a bowl of untreated salt. Everything is textured, natural, vibrant. As he works, he talks softly, explaining why this ancient bread didn't send people into blood sugar swings or stomach distress. He gestures first toward the bran, those beautiful flecks in the flour that you saw earlier. Medieval bread always contained bran, because milling with stones never removed it. Bran is fiber, and fiber slows the absorption of carbohydrates. With slower absorption comes gentler digestion, steadier energy, and no sudden sugar spikes. People could eat bread all day without crashing in the afternoon. Modern flour, by contrast, roller mills strip the bran away. The fluffier the bread, the emptier it becomes. You run your hand through the bowl of bran. It's soft, almost feathery. It smells faintly nutty. It feels alive. You wonder how the idea of removing such an essential part ever seemed logical. The baker then lifts the bowl of whole germ, the nutrient-dense embryo at the center of the grain. Medieval flour kept this as well. The germ contains healthy fats, antioxidants, and vitamins that slow digestion naturally. Remove it, and flour becomes little more than starch. This is where he introduces a curious fact. In some medieval regions, bakers were forbidden by law to remove any part of the grain before milling. Bread had to be whole. It had to nourish. White bread, when it existed, was rare and considered an indulgence only for the elite. A slight smile crosses his face. Historians still argue whether white bread tasted better or whether it was simply prized because it looked more refined. But whatever the reason, white bread wasn't the everyday norm, and people's health reflected that. He next turns your attention to the sourdough fermentation, the magical process you witnessed earlier. The microbes inside the starter digest sugars before they reach your bloodstream. They break down complex carbohydrates, soften gluten, pre-digest phytic acid, and create organic acids that slow digestion even further. No factories, no accelerators, no instant rise packets, just time and invisible helpers. You imagine the steady, rhythmic lives medieval people lived, never suspecting that their slow-operating bread-making rituals were early forms of low-glycemic cooking. The baker takes a crumb of the medieval loaf and crumbles it between his fingers. The texture is dense, moist, deeply structured. You chew another bite slowly and feel the difference. Your stomach warms, your body feels fueled, not overloaded. It's the kind of steady comfort that makes your eyelids grow a little heavier. He then breaks apart the modern loaf. It dissolves almost instantly into a mushy paste between his fingertips. It smells faintly sweet, oddly bland, and almost too light. When you taste it, the sweetness hits your tongue fast and then fades. A wave of hunger ripples through you unexpectedly. The baker raises an eyebrow knowingly. "This is what spikes you," he seems to say. He sweeps the table clean with one broad movement and places side by side 2 bowls of flour, stone ground and roller milled. The stone ground flour sparkles with texture. The roller milled flour looks flat, ghost-like. He dips your fingertip in the stone ground bowl first. The sensation is silky, warm, slightly grainy. When you taste it, there's a robust flavor that lingers. Then you try the modern flour. It tastes like nothing. A blank page. The baker smiles again, this time with a sleepy softness. The room seems to warm as he lights a tiny oil lamp and places it near the medieval loaf. Shadows dance across the walls in soft waves. Your breathing slows. Your posture softens. You almost melt into your seat. He lifts one last ingredient, water, and pours it slowly between his hands as a reminder that even something as simple as water was different in medieval bread. Mineral-rich, unchlorinated, alive with the land it came from. Then he sets everything aside and slices the medieval bread once more. He offers you a piece, and as you take the bite, your body responds with the kind of calm, steady satisfaction you wish every meal could give. You lean back. Your shoulders relax. A soft yawn rises, unexpected, gentle, and just before your mind begins to drift, the baker places a hand on the table and leans forward. "If this bread was gentle on your body," he says, "wait until you see how it protected people and how it shaped their health in ways we rarely think about today." A quiet cliffhanger settles in the warm air. You gather the last crumbs in your hand, unsure whether you're more nourished or more sleepy, maybe both. The baker's words linger in your mind like the glow of embers, and as you leave the warm bakehouse behind, the night air feels softer, heavier, almost medicinal in itself. You walk slowly toward another building, this one quieter than the bustling kitchens and communal ovens. A faint herbal aroma drifts through its wooden doorway, blending with the warm scent of freshly baked loaves. Inside, you find a small medieval infirmary. A healer, part herbalist, part midwife, part spiritual guide, sits beside a table covered with jars of dried plants, bowls of ground roots, and bread. Loaves everywhere, some sliced, some dried into hard rations, some crumbled into powder, some steeped in bowls of warm liquid. You blink. Bread is medicine? It seems strange at first, especially with the modern idea that bread is empty calories. But here, in the medieval world, bread was everything. Food, wages, survival, comfort, and yes, medicine. The healer gestures for you to sit. She is calm, with hands that seem to move at the pace of drifting clouds. She crushes a piece of stale bread into a fine dust and mixes it with a herbal infusion. She dips her finger in the mixture and tastes it, nodding with satisfaction. Bread heals, she seems to say with just her eyes. She begins showing you medieval uses for bread you never imagined. A newly baked loaf, still warm, is pressed against a person's chest to soothe congestion. The heat, combined with the bread's moisture, creates a makeshift poultice. A dried crust is ground into powder and mixed with wine or broth to help settle an upset stomach. Sourdough bread, with its fermented acids, is used to soothe certain skin conditions. Even burnt bread was used to filter water or clean wounds, because the charcoal-like edges absorbed impurities. These practices may sound eccentric today, even quaint, but in the medieval mindset, bread wasn't merely sustenance. Bread was a tool, a remedy, a symbol of balance. Historians still argue whether these treatments actually worked or whether they were simply comforting rituals passed down through tradition. But some of the practices were surprisingly effective. The charcoal edges really did absorb toxins. The warm loaves really did open airways. The fermented crumbs really did calm digestion. You watch as the healer takes a tiny loaf shaped like a small sun, a symbolic holy bread used in certain villages during early festivals. Some loaves were blessed by priests and believed to carry protective powers. In times of plague or famine, people clung to bread not just as food, but as hope. She places this symbolic loaf in your hands. It's light and slightly sweet-smelling. You feel a pulse of warmth just from holding it. Or perhaps that's simply the rune's gentle, herbal glow settling into you. She then shows you another curious tradition. Bread placed beneath a newborn's pillow for luck. Bread hung in stables to protect animals from illness. Bread dipped in wine and placed on a sick person's lips to strengthen their spirits. You lift an eyebrow. It sounds superstitious. She smiles, knowingly. Medieval life was woven from equal parts practicality and spiritual symbolism. Bread lived in both worlds. The healer brings you closer to a small hearth. She breaks apart a loaf that's baked almost to coal, its edges dark, crisp, bordering on burnt. She drops a piece into a jug of murky water. Within minutes, the water becomes clearer. You stare surprised. She explains silently through gestures that burnt bread was one of the earliest household filters, the carbon-absorbing impurities. A low-tech, unexpectedly effective science experiment born centuries before modern filtration. She presses your hand toward the jug, urging you to feel the difference. The water smells cleaner, fresher, less earthy. Bread, once again, doing what you never expected. Then she leads you to a wooden shelf lined with small cloth bags. Inside each one is bread powder, dried and ground. She sprinkles a bit onto a bowl of warm broth and mixes it into a smooth porridge designed to soothe the sick. The aroma is comforting, almost sleepy. You take a bite. It melts gently on your tongue, warm and calming. The kind of flavor that tells your nervous system, you're safe now. You feel your body relax. Your breathing deepen. A softness settle behind your eyelids. Maybe bread wasn't just food. Maybe bread was reassurance. Across thousands of years, maybe humans have always needed that feeling. The steadying weight of something warm in the hands, something nourishing in the stomach, something familiar on the tongue. The healer places a loaf beside a candle and tells you, with her quiet smile, to watch it. As the candle flickers, the loaf seems almost symbolic, round like the rising sun, crusted like the earth, warm like a heartbeat. And for a moment, Your mind drifts into that slow, ASMR-like rhythm of medieval quietude. Then she leans closer, holding up a particularly unusual loaf, one shaped and baked for ritual protection. She taps it lightly with her finger, and the sound echoes through the room like a small bell. This loaf wasn't eaten. It was kept, treasured, believed to ward off storms, illness, or misfortune. Superstition? Maybe, but it reveals how deeply bread was tied to emotion, comfort, and a human need for meaning. She places the loaf back on its shelf and gently touches your shoulder, guiding you toward the door. As you prepare to leave, she presses into your hands one final piece of bread, a warm, fermented crumb meant to soothe your stomach and help you rest. You take a slow breath. Your body feels grounded, your mind quieter, the world softer. She smiles again, and a quiet cliffhanger curls at the edge of her expression. If bread could heal the body, she implies, wait until you see how medieval people tested it and the strange rituals they trusted to keep it safe. You step out of the healer's warm, fragrant room and into the cool medieval night. A soft breeze sweeps through the village, carrying hints of wood smoke and freshly baked crusts. Lamps flicker in doorways. People settle in for sleep. But the baker from earlier waves you over. He's holding something curious in his hands. A small sack of flour and a bowl of water. And is that a candle? He beckons you inside a dim side room of the bakehouse, where only a single oil lamp glows. Here, he tells you, not with words, but with gestures, you're going to learn how medieval people checked whether flour was safe. Food poisoning existed in their world too. Spoilage, mold, toxins, contaminated grain. They didn't have lab tests, no refrigeration, no expiration dates stamped on bags. So they developed their own methods, equal parts practical, symbolic, and deeply strange. On a small table, he arranges the objects. Each one represents a test. Each one reveals how seriously medieval people took bread quality, because bread wasn't optional. Bread was survival. Test 1. The water drop test. He sprinkles a pinch of flour into the bowl of water. You watch closely. The flour floats for a moment, then slowly sinks, forming cloudy trails. He nods approvingly. In some medieval communities, this sinking behavior meant the flour was fresh, rich in oils and fiber that made it heavier and more cohesive. If the flour floated too long or dissolved oddly, people believed it indicated age, dryness, or adulteration. Historians still argue whether this test was reliable or just guesswork. But watching it now, the cloudy swirl feels strangely elegant. Test 2. The candle test. The baker lights the candle, cups his hands around the flame, and holds the flour sack close to it, just near the heat, not touching. You notice something subtle. The fresh flour gives off a warm, nutty scent almost immediately. The baker inhales, nodding. This was a real practice in parts of medieval Europe. Smelling flour warmed gently near a flame. Thieves sometimes adulterated flour with chalk or powdered bone, cheap fillers that didn't release the same aroma. A good miller could detect faults with nothing more than heat and experience. You lean in and inhale too. The scent is comforting, almost like roasted grain or toasted nuts. It makes your eyelids droop pleasantly. Test 3. The clump test. He scoops a handful of flour, squeezes it, and opens his palm. The flour forms a loose clump, then gently crumbles apart. This was considered a good sign. Fresh, stone-ground flour, still containing oils and germ, stuck together in soft formations. Old or overly dry flour stayed loose, drifting apart like dust. You try it yourself. It feels warm, silky, surprisingly heavy for something so fine. Test 4. The strange, superstitious test. Now the baker grins, the kind of grin that says, prepare yourself for something unusual. He pinches a small amount of flour and places it on the table. Then he drops a single grain of salt on top. He watches. You watch. Nothing happens. He nods seriously. This test appears in several medieval manuscripts, usually accompanied by cryptic notes like the salt will reveal deceit. Some believe that adulterated flour repelled salt. Others thought salt absorbed moisture only from pure flour. No one today can fully explain the logic. Historians still argue whether this was symbolic ritual or genuine belief. But standing here, seeing the baker treat it with such solemn respect, you realize it doesn't matter. It was part of the rhythm, part of a world where flour was precious and a single bad loaf could threaten a family's survival. Test 5, the animal test. He opens a small wooden cage, letting out a plump, content-looking hen. She clucks softly and hops toward the table. The baker places 2 tiny piles of flour on the ground, one fresh, one intentionally spoiled for demonstration. The hen pecks the good flour eagerly. It avoids the bad pile. You blink, surprised by the clarity of the result. This test appears in agricultural writings from the Middle Ages and early Renaissance. Animals, especially chickens, were used as intuitive judges of grain quality. Their instincts often caught mold or contamination faster than humans could. The hen waddles back to her cage, satisfied. You suspect she gets paid in breadcrumbs. The baker wipes his hands and motions for you to take a seat. He places the fresh flour beside you, and then the spoiled flour. The difference in smell is subtle but unmistakable. The good flour smells warm and earthy. The spoiled flour has a faint bitterness, almost metallic. Suddenly, the safeguard rituals make sense. If bread was life, then testing bread was protecting life. He picks up a final loaf sitting near the hearth, a darker one, marked with a carved symbol. He breaks it in half. The inside is speckled strangely with odd discolorations. This is what we fear, his eyes seem to say. You feel a chill, not frightening, just solemn. This loaf, likely contaminated by ergot or mold, represents one of the most dangerous threats in medieval Europe. Some outbreaks caused hallucinations. Some caused illness. Some destroyed entire harvests. No wonder people developed rituals, superstitions, and tests to avoid disaster. No wonder bread was treated with such respect. And no wonder people prayed over ovens, mills, and fields. Bread wasn't guaranteed. Bread was a blessing. You touched the safe flour again, letting it fall between your fingers. It feels like tiny grains of sand glowing in warm gold. Comforting, familiar, predictable. A wave of calm washes over you, slow, immersive, sleep-heavy. The baker places a gentle hand on your shoulder and nods toward the door. There's something else you need to see, something bigger than individual loaves or personal rituals. A building that holds fire, heat, community, and safety all at once. The communal village oven. And that's where your journey leads next. The baker leads you out into the night, and instantly you notice something different in the air. A warmer current. A faint, sweet aroma of rising dough. A deeper glow flickering between the cottages. As you follow him through the winding path, the village seems to draw together. Houses leaning inward, as if protecting a shared secret. And then you see it. At the center of the square stands the communal oven, a massive stone structure shaped like a dome, glowing from within. Its entrance radiates golden light, bright and cheerful against the cool evening. Villagers gather around it with baskets, laughter, and a gentle hum of daily ritual. This isn't just an oven. This is the heart of the village. The baker gestures for you to come closer. The ground near the oven is warm beneath your feet, heated by the fire that's been burning since dawn. Medieval ovens like this held heat for hours, sometimes an entire day, and families brought their dough here to bake in scheduled rounds. You step inside the covered shelter around the oven, and the air wraps around you like a warm blanket. The scent is incredible. Sourdough tang, toasted bran, crackling crust, and the faint smoky sweetness of wood-fired heat. Your whole body softens. A woman approaches carrying a wooden peel, essentially a long, flat paddle, with a shaped loaf resting on the end. She slides it into the oven with a practiced flick of the wrist. More families follow, placing dough into the fiery chamber one after another, each loaf marked with a symbol so they can identify it later. You recognize some symbols from earlier: sunbursts, initials, flowers, simple lines. Bread as identity. The baker hands you a wooden peel. Your eyes widen slightly. Surely not? He nods. A villager approaches you with their dough, trusting you to place it into the oven. You slide the peel beneath the soft, round loaf and guide it into the hearth's amber glow. The heat brushes your face, warm enough to make your eyelids flutter. A soft cheer rises from a couple of children nearby, as if placing bread in the oven is a tiny victory. A small, shared moment of triumph. And it is, because this oven isn't just about baking. It's about togetherness. The baker explains through gestures that firing an oven of this size required enormous amounts of wood, too much for any one household. So the village shared it, sharing labor, fuel, time, and stories. Baking wasn't a solitary task. It was communal, rhythmic, woven into the fabric of every week. You're invited to sit on a bench beside a group of villagers chatting quietly as the bread bakes. Someone passes around a cup of warm ale. Someone else shares a story about an oven that lasted 3 generations before collapsing in a storm. A man tells you a curious tradition. In some regions, the oven had a guardian whose job was to tend the fire and watch for signs. If smoke rose too quickly, it meant the wood was wet. If too slowly, the dough might not rise properly. Some even believe the oven could speak, creaking sounds interpreted as warnings or blessings. Historians still argue whether communal ovens belonged to the lord of the manor or to the villagers themselves, because ownership varied widely. But what didn't vary was their importance. A medieval village without a communal oven was like a village without a gathering place, without a heartbeat. You watch as the baker pulls open the heavy oven door. The blast of heat is stunning but comforting. Inside, the loaves have changed shape, rising proudly, their crust splitting in jagged patterns, steam escaping like the oven itself is exhaling. He pulls out the first few loaves. Crackling, golden, perfect. Someone laughs quietly in relief. Someone else crosses themselves. A grandmother wipes a tear. Bread is emotion here. Bread is memory. Bread is hope made edible. A small girl taps your shoulder and offers you a piece of steaming crust torn from the corner of her family's loaf. You take it. The crust crackles between your fingers. The crumb melts on your tongue, warm and tangy. The entire experience makes your body feel slower, heavier, calmer. You rest your elbows on your knees, feeling the soft, radiating heat of the structure behind you. It's the kind of heat that seeps into your muscles and tells them, relax now. You're safe here. Someone begins humming a simple melody. Someone else starts recounting a local folktale about an oven spirit who protected the village from spoiled grain. Children curl up next to their parents on the warm stones. A dog stretches out at your feet, letting out a long, contented sigh. This oven may have baked countless loaves, but more importantly, it baked community. And just when you think you've seen everything medieval bread could mean to people, the baker touches your arm gently and points toward the night sky. Rising above the village rooftops is the faint outline of the church tower. Its bells are silent, but tomorrow they'll ring for a feast day. And with a feast day comes another world of bread traditions, rituals, blessings, symbolic shapes, stories older than the language used to tell them. A gentle cliffhanger wraps around you like warm steam from the oven. If bread fed their bodies and bound their community, wait until you see how it fed their faith. The warmth of the communal oven still lingers on your skin as you walk toward the church tower, glowing faintly in the night. The village is quiet now, but there's a hum in the air, an anticipatory stillness that hints tomorrow isn't just another day. Something special is coming. A feast day. And in the medieval world, feast days meant bread unlike anything baked during the ordinary week. You enter the church through a wooden door worn smooth by generations of hands. Inside, candles flicker, casting long, soft shadows across tapestries and stone walls. The scent is a blend of beeswax, incense, and, unexpectedly, fresh bread. Near the altar, baskets of loaves are arranged like offerings. Some round, some braided, some shaped into animals, suns, wheels, or symbolic knots. A monk approaches you with a small smile. He carries a loaf decorated with intricate scoring patterns. He places it gently into your hands. This one, his gesture implies, has a story. You follow him into a side chapel filled with more loaves. each one tied to a ritual, a season, or a slice of medieval belief. Bread wasn't just daily sustenance, it was spiritual. Bread for feasts. On feast days, bread took center stage. Loaves were enriched with honey, dried fruits, rare spices, or extra fermentation time. Bakers shaped them into symbols representing abundance or divine blessings. For Easter, some regions baked loaves shaped like lambs. On harvest festivals, loaves were shaped like sheaves of grain. The monk hands you a beautifully braided loaf, its crust glazed to a warm shine. It looks almost too perfect to eat. You lift it to your nose, sweet, spiced, comforting. He touches his own chest lightly, telling you what villagers already know: feast bread wasn't just food, it was gratitude made edible. Bread for fasts. Then he leads you to a simpler basket. These loaves are plain, almost austere, dense and dark, with barely any salt. During fasting periods, Advent, Lent, certain saint days, people ate bread that reminded them of humility and simplicity. Some loaves were made only from coarse grain and water, with no fermentation. Others were baked so dry they lasted weeks. The contrast is striking. Feast bread tells stories of abundance. Fast bread whispers reminders of discipline. Both, however, carried meaning. Bread is blessing. The monk walks to a stone basin and sprinkles water across a circle of loaves. This wasn't done for flavor. It was symbolic, part blessing, part protection. In some regions, priests blessed bread during masses. Then the loaves were crumbled into pieces and shared among the congregation as a sign of unity. He shows you another curiosity: a loaf marked with a cross before baking. This practice pops up in many places historically, not only as a spiritual mark, but also as a practical way to help dough rise evenly. Historians still argue whether the original purpose was sacred or practical. But watching the monk trace a cross into the dough, it looks undeniably reverent. He invites you to try. You press your finger into a fresh loaf, tracing the cross, watching the indentation settle naturally into the dough. It feels grounding, peaceful, bread shaped like stories. The monk then brings you to the most whimsical part of the chapel, a table filled with shaped breads made for holidays. A loaf shaped like a bird for spring festivals. A coiled serpentine loaf for midsummer rituals. A wheel loaf representing the turning year. A small, round loaf with a hollow center representing eternity. You pick up a sun-shaped loaf, radiating rays from the center like carved petals. Its golden crust gleams under candlelight. It's beautiful, almost like edible stained glass. He taps it lightly. It gives a soft, hollow sound. He nods, pleased. Bread wasn't just eaten. It was carved, painted with spices, decorated with seeds, or imprinted with wooden molds. Artistic expression baked into nourishment. Bread that chose you. The monk leads you to a set of baskets labeled with cryptic medieval runes. During certain festivals, villagers would pick a loaf at random from such baskets. The chosen loaf was believed to predict luck for the coming season. A perfectly baked loaf meant health. A cracked loaf might signify hardship. A loaf with unusual bubbles could signal unexpected events. He holds out the basket. You reach in and choose one. The loaf is round, perfectly browned, with a small sunburst on its surface. The monk smiles warmly, as if to say, good omen. You hold the bread in your hands, surprised by how comforting it feels. Warm, solid, reassuring. As you breathe in its scent, something softens inside you, a gentle heaviness, the kind that comes when your mind and body finally sink into the same slow rhythm. Bread as memory. The monk invites you to sit. He slices a feast loaf and places a piece in your hand. It's sweet, tender, fragrant with honey. As you take a bite, flavors bloom. Slow, soft, sleepy flavors that remind you of warmth and community. He then slices a fast day loaf, dense, earthy, plain. You taste it. It grounds you. It's steadying, humbling, almost meditative. The contrast between the two tells the entire story of medieval time. Moments of celebration, days of restraint, seasons of labor, seasons of gratitude. Bread marked them all. It was their calendar, their ritual, They're a reminder of the sacred in the ordinary. The monk stands and gestures toward the door. You follow, stepping back into the cool night. The village is silent now, the feast day approaching with its own quiet anticipation. He points toward the road leading out of the village, a long, narrow path lit by starlight. You know where this is heading. If bread fed their rituals and revealed their faith. It also changed dramatically when the world itself began to change, when modern methods entered the picture and everything shifted. A gentle cliffhanger drifts with the breeze. What medieval bread built, modern bread began to undo. You leave the soft candlelit chapel behind and step out into cool night air. The village feels timeless, preserved, suspended in a gentle rhythm. But as you walk down the starlit road, the monk indicated, something begins to shift. The dirt path beneath your feet starts transitioning into cobblestone. The humble cottages fade into larger buildings. The warm medieval glow slowly gives way to the hum of something different. You blink. You've moved forward in time. Where the medieval world felt slow, tactile, earthy, this new world feels sharper, faster, harder. A world where bread is still everywhere, but quietly, fundamentally changed. You step into a 19th century milling district at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. Tall brick buildings loom over you, their windows flickering with artificial light. The air smells different, not nutty and warm, but chalky, metallic, and strangely empty. A mill worker waves you inside one of the massive structures, and instantly, you understand the rupture between worlds. This is roller milling. Gone are the round stones turning gently at human pace. Instead, massive steel rollers spin at intense speeds, crushing wheat into an unnaturally fine powder. It's loud. It's efficient. It's completely indifferent. The worker shows you a handful of this new flour. It is startlingly white, whiter than anything produced in medieval times. It looks sterile, bleached, lifeless. When you rub it between your fingers, it leaves no oily residue, no warmth, no sense of grain. This is refined flour, he says. The bran? Removed. The germ? Removed. The nourishing oils? Removed to prevent spoilage. The flavor? Gone. The fiber? Gone. You realize with a slow ache, medieval flour was alive. Modern flour is empty. The worker leads you further into the factory. You see long tubes feeding flour through sifters, removing the large parts, the dark parts, the nutritious parts. Everything that once made bread slow and steady is stripped away. Bread is no longer a whole food. It's a product. Then he takes you to another section, chemical additives, bleaching agents, dough conditioners, fast-acting yeasts, all used to make bread rise quicker, whiter, lighter, and cheaper. This is where the rules break completely. Medieval bread took hours to ferment, soften, and come alive. Modern bread is forced to rise in minutes, stripped of the biological processes that once protected digestion. You're shown 2 loaves, one medieval style, one modern. The medieval one is dense, dark, nourishing. The modern one is pale and fluffy, practically weightless. He presses a finger into the modern loaf. It springs back instantly, an airy sponge. He presses a finger into the medieval loaf. It yields slowly like a living thing. As you look around the factory, you understand something profound. Industrial bread isn't evil, but it is forgetful. It forgot the fiber. It forgot the fermentation. It forgot the oils and nutrients. It forgot the rituals that connected people to the land, to the grain, to each other. You remember the communal oven, the laughter, the warmth, the togetherness. Here, machines replace people. Time is compressed. Flavor is erased. A single sentence echoes through your mind. When bread stopped being slow, it stopped being kind. The worker nods as if he heard your thoughts. He hands you a piece of fresh industrial bread. You bite into it. It dissolves instantly. No substance, no grounding weight, no calm aftertaste. You feel a tiny rush, a quick sweetness, then nothing. A hollow satisfaction. He then hands you a piece of medieval-style bread. The contrast is jarring. It fills you, steadies you, speaks to you like an old friend. You suddenly understand the cliffhanger forming inside your own heart. If modern bread broke the rules, what it did next would change human health forever. And you step back into the moonlit road, ready to follow the trail. You follow the industrial road deeper into the humming cityscape, and the moonlight fades behind factory chimneys. Sparks glow in upper windows. Steam rises in slow breaths. This is no longer the world of fields, stone mills, or bubbling sourdough bowls. This is the age when bread became engineered. A foreman waves you into a brightly lit warehouse. The floors shine with an almost unnatural cleanliness. And everywhere, on shelves, in barrels, in cloth sacks, you see powders. Dozens of them. Labels you recognize, others you don't. Some sound harmless. Some sound like they belong in a chemistry lab. He gestures to the sacks with a kind of pride that makes you uneasy. This, he explains, is how industrial bread keeps its predictability. How big cities feed millions quickly. How loaves last longer, rise faster, whiten brighter, soften easier. He hands you a scoop of pure white flour, refined, sifted, stripped of everything whole. You pinch it between your fingers. It feels weightless like ghost dust. No warmth, no aroma, nothing of the earth left in it. Then he takes you to the first station, bleaching tanks, chlorine gas, benzoyl peroxide, oxidizing agents. Their job? To whiten flour, to speed aging artificially, to remove the yellow tint that natural grain carries. You blink hard. Medieval bakers cherished that golden tint. Here it's scrubbed away. The foreman dips a spoon into two bowls, one with yellowish, freshly milled flour, one with bleached flour. The difference is shocking. One looks like food. The other looks like snow. He motions for you to smell them. The unbleached flour smells warm and nutty. The bleached one smells like nothing. Neutral, silent. A hollowness settles in your chest. He moves you onward to the next station, dough conditioners. Strange names float past you. Azotocarbonamide, calcium propionate, datum, L-cysteine, sometimes derived from hair or feathers. You raise an eyebrow. He shrugs. These make bread behave, he'd say, if words were part of this experience. Stretchier, softer, faster rising, more obedient. Then he gestures toward a rapid mixing machine. A huge metal arm beats dough violently. Nothing like the gentle folding of medieval bakers. This dough doesn't rest. It doesn't develop naturally. It's forced into existence. He tears off a piece and places it in your hand. It feels elastic, almost rubbery. No tang, no aroma, no life. You remember the mother dough from the medieval village, fed daily, nurtured like a family member. Here, yeast comes from a packet, engineered for speed and uniformity. No wild microbes, no personality, no slow, fermentative magic. Something inside you deflates. He shows you one more bucket, preservatives. Calcium propionate is the most famous. It prevents mold. Medieval bread rarely lasted long enough to mold. It was too nourishing to sit around. Modern bread, stripped of oils and germ, would grow mold quickly, unless chemicals stop it. He pulls out a loaf from a conveyor belt. Soft, white, perfectly uniform. Then he holds it beside a medieval-style loaf someone brought as a comparison. Dark, dense, beautifully uneven. He presses 2 fingers into the modern loaf. It squishes in like a memory foam pillow and pops back instantly. He presses the medieval loaf. Slow resistance. Real texture. You take a bite of the modern bread. It's soft, but in a strangely artificial way. It sticks to your teeth slightly. The sweetness hits quickly, fades quickly, and leaves a faint emptiness. When he offers a piece of medieval bread, the contrast nearly stuns you. Your body remembers this one. Your stomach sighs in gratitude. A faint hum rises in a warehouse as conveyor belts clatter on. The lights buzz. Machines pulse. Everything here is fast, efficient, and indifferent. For the first time, you understand why so many people today feel uneasy about bread, suspicious of it, or unwell after eating it. It isn't the grain that changed first. It was the system. The foreman leads you to a high window that looks down on the sprawling factory. You see flour dust drifting like industrial snow. Machines stamping loaves by the hundreds. Workers loading crates onto wagons. If medieval bread was a slow symphony, modern bread became a factory whistle. And then a thought forms quietly, like a whisper in your mind. If this is how the system changed bread, what did it do to our bodies? You leave the warehouse, stepping into the cool night where the modern street meets the fading memory of fields. A soft cliffhanger follows you like a shadow. What happens inside you when bread no longer behaves like bread? You step away from the industrial district and the night shifts again. The clatter of machines fades behind you, replaced by a quieter, more introspective atmosphere. A narrow path leads toward a small cottage on the outskirts of town, modern but not industrial. Warm lights glow inside. Something about it feels like a bridge between eras. When you enter, you find a long wooden table covered with bowls, diagrams, loaves, and curious jars. A physician, part scientist, part observer of human nature, invites you to sit. He motions toward two plates in front of you. On one plate, a slice of medieval-style sourdough. On the other, a slice of modern industrial bread. He begins his lesson not with machines, but with your gut. He places a hand on his stomach, then on yours, as if to say, bread's story doesn't end in the oven. It ends inside you, the glycemic roller coaster. He points first to the modern bread. You take a bite. Almost instantly, you feel a tiny spike, a rush of sweetness, quick and bright. Then a sudden hollowing out sensation. Your body responds like it does to candy. Fast energy, fast drop. He shows you a diagram. Refined starch, no bran, no germ, breaks down into glucose rapidly, blood sugar rises sharply, then crashes. Your stomach sends a subtle ripple outward, light but noticeable. The physician nods. The fiber, that never arrived. He lifts a bowl of bran, the same bran medieval bread always contained. In modern bread, he explains, this bran is stripped away. Fiber slows digestion, feeds gut microbes, gives your intestines something to hold on to. He pours the bran slowly onto the medieval loaf slice. The symbolism is clear. The ancient bread still has it. You take a bite of the medieval bread. It's dense, grounding, and your body responds with a slow exhale like it recognizes the pace. Gluten that behaves differently. Then he brings out two dough balls. One fermented slowly, medieval style. One made quickly with instant yeast. He tears them open. The long fermented dough is soft, honeycombed, pliable. Fermentation has already broken down portions of gluten, making it gentler on digestion. The fast-rise dough is tight, rubbery, undeveloped. He gestures as if asking, which one do you think your stomach likes better? You already know. He hands you small cooked samples of each. The long fermented one melts gradually, tangy and warm. The instant rise one feels heavy and sticky. A quiet truth settles. It isn't gluten alone causing problems for many people. It's how the gluten is treated. Your microbiome's reaction. He places two jars in front of you. The first contains a flourishing garden of microbes, colorful, diverse, thriving. The second is sparse, almost barren. He gestures. Medieval bread with fiber, fermentation, and whole grains fed your microbiome. Modern bread offers little support. In some cases, it even contributes to imbalance. He pours water over each jar. The thriving one responds slowly, smoothly. The depleted one froths unevenly. Your gut, he suggests, behaves the same way. Strange additives, strange responses. He places a small plate of modern bread additives on the table. You see, emulsifiers, preservatives, bleaching residues, fast yeast byproducts. Each one may be safe individually, he explains, but in combination, in daily consumption, in bodies already stressed. Historians still argue whether medieval people suffered fewer digestive issues or whether such problems simply weren't recorded. But modern scientific debate is clear. Certain additives disrupt the mucus layer of the gut and aggravate sensitive systems. He shows a simple demonstration. 2 glasses of water, one clean, one cloudy with a trace of emulsifier. The cloudy one remains unsettled. You swallow without meaning to. It all feels too real. the sourdough advantage. Finally, he returns to the medieval slice, the sourdough. He draws attention to the tangy aroma, the chewy texture, the slow fermentation. He writes on a slate board, predigestion of gluten, breakdown of phytic acid, creation of organic acids, stable blood sugar response, support for beneficial microbes. This isn't romanticization. It's biological cooperation. You take another bite. Your body warms. Your shoulders drop. You feel steady. He pours you a small cup of water and gestures toward the modern slice again. You take the bite. Almost instantly, your mouth feels dry. A faint tightness forms in your stomach. He hands you the medieval slice once more. Relief. The quiet realization. The physician places both slices side by side and looks at you gently. Bread didn't stop nourishing us, his expression says. We change how we make it. Your chest tightens, not in fear, but in understanding. Bread wasn't the villain. The process was. And then he offers one last thought, a soft cliffhanger. If medieval bread fueled life for centuries, how do modern bodies react when they finally meet ancient grain again? You lean back in your chair, feeling the question settle deep and warm. Tomorrow's answers lie on the horizon. The physician's cottage fades behind you as dawn begins to soften the sky. A pale glow stretches over the horizon, gentle, quiet, almost reflective. The road ahead shifts once more, this time leading toward a stone courtyard where scholars, bakers, monks, herbalists, and travelers sit around a long wooden table. It's a debate hall, medieval in spirit, modern in topic. A scribe motions for you to sit. He dips his quill into ink and points it at a loaf of bread placed in the center of the table. Gluten. The word hangs in the air like a spell everyone interprets differently. Around you, voices rise, not arguing, just weaving perspectives together like threads in a tapestry. A monk begins with history. He lifts a sheaf of einkorn stalks and explains that ancient wheat contained less gluten and a simpler protein structure. You hold the grain in your hand, noticing again its compactness, its ancient modesty. Then a farmer speaks. He places a bundle of modern wheat beside the einkorn. It is larger, fluffier, hybridized for yield and machine efficiency, not for digestibility. He turns the heads of grain between his fingers, showing how the breeding focus shifted over centuries. A baker joins in. She needs 2 doughs, one from ancient wheat, one from modern wheat. The ancient dough is softer, more delicate. The modern dough is incredibly elastic, almost too elastic, stretching like a rubber band. It performs better in machines, her gesture says, but your stomach may tell a different story. Then the physician from earlier steps in and offers another angle, fermentation. He tears open 2 finished loaves. The slow-fermented medieval-style bread feels gentle, fragrant, relaxed. The instant-rise modern bread feels tight, undeveloped. He writes on a slate, gluten itself is not the villain. Gluten without fermentation can be. Next, a modern scientist places diagrams on the table. Complex illustrations of protein chains and gut receptors. You watch as gluten strands in fermented dough appear partially broken down, while gluten strands in fast-rise dough remain rigid and intact. He circles a phrase. Structure matters. Then a historian raises a finger with a thoughtful smile and adds a curiosity. In some medieval regions, gluten sensitivity existed, but it was rare. In others, it went unrecorded. Historians still argue whether medieval diets were truly gentler or whether chronic conditions simply weren't documented. The table nods. No one claims certainty. A nutritionist joins in with yet another strand. She holds up a loaf made with modern additives, dough conditioners that strengthen gluten artificially, making it even stretchier than nature intended. Your memory flashes back to the factory. That strange rubbery dough. That unnatural bounce. She places a loaf of sourdough beside it, real sourdough. Flour, water, salt, thyme. You take a piece of each. Your body responds before your thoughts do. One feels peaceful. One feels busy. Then a philosopher of food. Yes, apparently those exist. leans forward and says something without words, but with an expression that settles into your chest. Bread was meant to be slow. Around the table, the scholars nod. The debate grows more intricate, but never hostile. Did selective breeding increase gluten content? Did modern milling change its structure more than nature did? Did the loss of bran and germ amplify gluten's impact? Is fermentation the missing mediator? Does the microbiome decide everything? Or are we only beginning to understand the story? The scribe writes the final line in bold. The problem isn't gluten. The problem is forgetting how to treat gluten. The monk breaks a piece of bread and shares it with everyone. You bite into it. Long fermented, made from ancient grains. Slow, gentle, honest. The flavors settle like calm waves in your body. Across the table, another baker slices a modern loaf. The contrast is sharp: texture, aroma, behavior. You realize something profound. Gluten didn't change overnight, but the world around it did. People changed wheat. People changed milling. People changed fermentation. People changed expectations. And your body has simply been trying to keep up. As the scholars pack their parchment and bread samples, the conversation drifts into a soft conclusion. Everyone agrees that the story of gluten is complicated. Everyone agrees it's not the same in every loaf. And everyone agrees that something important was lost when bread became fast. You stand, feeling the weight of the debate settle gently in your chest. Not heavy, but thoughtful. A scribe taps your shoulder and points down a wooded path. The road continues. Where debates end, comparisons begin. A quiet cliffhanger forms. You've heard the theories. Now you're going to taste the truth. The wooded path opens into a quiet clearing. Soft grass, a wooden table, lanterns swaying gently in the breeze. It feels like a tasting hall arranged by time itself. On the table rest two boards. One holds medieval bread, dark, rustic, made from stone-ground grain and long fermentation. The other holds modern bread, pale, uniform, featherlight. A baker from the medieval village appears on one side of the table. A modern factory baker appears on the other. They nod politely at each other, a kind of respectful curiosity passing between them. Then both gesture for you to sit. This is it. Not theory, not debate, not diagrams. Just truth through taste. The medieval bite. You start with the ancient loaf. The crumb is dense but tender. Warm, earthy aromas rise from it. Wheat, fermentation, a tanginess that feels alive. Your teeth meet real resistance, the kind that feels satisfying, grounding. As you chew, something remarkable happens. Your whole body relaxes. Warmth spreads slowly. Your breathing deepens. A subtle calm settles under your ribs. This bread releases energy in long, steady waves, like a small fire that burns bright without smoke or sparks. You feel nourished, satiated, connected. The medieval baker smiles softly, as if recognizing a look she's seen 1,000 times. She points to the loaf, stone-milled grain, bran intact, germ intact, slow fermentation, real salt, nothing else. Food made of the world. The modern bite. Then you reach for the modern slice. It is weightless, surprisingly so. Your fingers press into it like a sponge. When you bite down, it collapses instantly. The sweetness hits quickly, then vanishes. Your stomach reacts with a faint question mark. The modern baker nods, acknowledging the difference. He gestures to his loaf. Refined flour, conditioners, fast yeast, additives for softness and shelf life. Efficient, yes. Predictable, yes. But something inside it is missing. You chew again, and the contrast becomes undeniable. The medieval bread feels like a meal. The modern bread feels like a placeholder for a meal. One fills you slowly. The other leaves an echo of hunger. Texture tells the story. The bakers lay out a simple demonstration. The medieval baker squeezes her loaf. It yields slowly, with tight, natural structure. Fermentation bubbles frozen neatly in time. The modern baker squeezes his. It springs back instantly. Air replaces substance. He breaks the loaf open. Uniform, white, soft. She breaks hers open. Swirls of bran, pockets of fermentation, character in every inch. You feel as though you're holding two different species of bread. Aroma is memory. The medieval loaf smells of fields, fermentation, warm stones, slow evenings around a communal oven. The modern loaf smells of sweetness, processing, the neutral calm of industrial predictability. Neither smell is wrong, but only one smells like history. What the body whispers. You take another bite of medieval bread. Your gut responds like a familiar rhythm has returned. You take another bite of modern bread. Your body hesitates, polite but tentative. The bakers exchange a knowing glance. Without speaking a word, they both convey the same message. Bread changed more in the last 150 years than in the previous 6,000. And your body noticed. Symbolic test, the crumb fall. The bakers perform a final demonstration. They each tear off a small crumb and let it fall to the table. The medieval crumb lands with weight, substantial. The modern crumb drifts down like styrofoam. It's a small moment, almost silly, but it tells the whole story. One is food, the other is product. A gentle realization. You look down at the two slices. The medieval one feels like something you could build a life from. The modern one feels like something you could eat endlessly without ever feeling complete. Not good versus bad, just different realities. And as you sit in the quiet clearing, feeling the slow release calm of the ancient loaf settling into your chest, a soft cliffhanger arrives. If medieval bread nourished the world for generations, could reviving ancient grains help us remember how to eat again? You rise, brushing crumbs from your hands, ready to follow the faint trail of golden stalks leading out of the clearing. The trail of golden stalks leads you out of the tasting clearing, and the air shifts again, lighter, cleaner, almost hopeful. Ahead of you, the landscape opens into wide fields that shimmer in different shades of wheat gold, pale blonde, deep amber, rusty red, even streaks of bronze. Not a monoculture, not a single type of grain, but a tapestry. You step closer, running your hand through the stalks, and instantly feel the difference. These grains aren't identical. Their heads vary in size and color. Their stems bend differently in the breeze. They look alive, complex, an echo of the medieval world you left behind. Someone calls out from the distance, a modern farmer wearing worn denim and sun-bleached boots, waving you over. His face is calm, weathered, quietly proud. When he gestures for you to follow him into the field, you feel like you're stepping into a bridge between eras. He kneels and plucks a head of einkorn. Tiny kernels, irregular shape, golden, tight, ancient. Then he plucks a head of modern wheat. Larger, uniform, optimized. He pours both varieties into your palms. The einkorn feels surprisingly heavy for its size, dense, mineral-rich, aromatic even before milling. The modern wheat feels airy by comparison, engineered for yield rather than depth. The farmer smiles softly as you weigh them. He doesn't say a word, but his expression tells you everything. We nearly forgot these, but they never forgot us. You walk deeper into the patchwork of fields. Each section is a different heritage grain. Emmer, once fed to pharaohs. Spelt, beloved in medieval Germany. Rivet wheat, coarse and stubborn yet flavorful. Black Egyptian wheat, dark as roasted coffee. Red Fife, the grain that built Canada's early bread culture. All of them nearly vanished during the rise of industrial agriculture. Too difficult to harvest by machine, too low yield, too unpredictable. But now, they're returning, patch by patch, farm by farm. The farmer leads you toward a small wooden mill house. Not medieval, but intentionally traditional. A stone mill turns slowly inside, powered by electricity, yes, but grinding with the gentleness of old stones. You hear the familiar hum, that soft rhythmic crush you first heard in the medieval village. He opens the mill, revealing flour flecked with color, browns, golds, reds, nothing like the blank whiteness of industrial flour. You inhale deeply, warm, nutty, alive. Your shoulders loosen without you realizing it. The farmer hands you a warm paper bag of freshly milled flour. As your fingers sink into it, you feel the oils, the texture, the life that medieval flour had, but with modern cleanliness and consistency. It's a reunion of worlds. Next, he invites you into a small outdoor kitchen where a baker, modern but clearly romantic about old ways, prepares dough using nothing but heritage flour, water, salt, thyme. She folds the dough slowly, letting it stretch and relax. No mixers, no conditioners, no speed, just patience. You notice something beautiful. The dough smells like the medieval loaf you tasted earlier, fermented, aromatic, rich, but also smells brighter, somehow. New world meeting old. She shapes a round loaf and places it into a cast iron Dutch oven. Not a medieval hearth, not an industrial conveyor, just fire, heat, simplicity. As you wait, the farmer gestures toward a small whiteboard where he's written curious notes from his work with heritage grains, lower gluten density, better mineral absorption, more flavor complexity, happier microbiome responses, survive drought with no irrigation. Then he laughs silently and points to a note scribbled at the bottom. Modern wheat, great for machines. Lost grains, great for people. You smile, because it's true. The baker lifts the lid from the Dutch oven, and steam rolls out in a soft cloud. The loaf is gorgeous, craggy, deeply golden, rustic yet elegant. A blend of medieval soul and modern revival. When she slices it, the crumb is open and airy, but still grounded with flecks of bran and grain. You take a bite. The flavor is astonishing. Nutty, floral, earthy, slightly sweet, with a tang that settles beneath your tongue like a warm echo. It tastes like history returning, and your body reacts instantly. You feel that same slow, steady energy the medieval bread gave you. That grounded calm, that comfortable heaviness behind your eyes, that sense of nourishment, not just fed but anchored. The farmer offers you kernels from other plots, each one tasting different, each carrying its own personality. A kind of grain wine tasting, with terroir you can actually feel. He motions toward the fields again. You look out, realizing what this place represents. Not nostalgia, not LARPing medieval life, but repair. Repairing the relationship between bread and body, between farming and nature, between speed and nourishment. A gentle breeze drifts through the fields, brushing past your ears like a whisper. We are remembering, and with that, a soft cliffhanger begins to form, subtle but meaningful. If these lost grains are returning, what other lessons from medieval bakers are waiting to guide us forward? You take another bite of the heritage loaf. Warm, grounded, sleep-heavy in the best way. Then you step toward the next path. The path from the heritage fields leads you toward a quiet hillside overlooking both worlds. The medieval village behind you, glowing softly in memory, and the modern fields ahead, rustling with rediscovered grains. You sit on a wooden bench placed beneath an old oak tree. The air is calm, steady, filled with the earthy scent of wheat, warm stones, and something else, something timeless. A figure approaches, the same medieval baker you first met, flour still dusting her sleeves. But beside her walks a modern artisan baker, hands strong and confident, carrying a freshly baked loaf cooled under a linen cloth. Two bakers, two eras, meeting in one moment. They sit beside you. They don't speak. They simply begin showing you the lessons that survived across centuries. Lesson 1. Patience is flavor. The medieval baker lifts her wooden bowl of sourdough starter, the living culture she fed daily. The modern baker lifts her own jar of bubbling starter. The bubbles dance the same way. The aroma is the same. The warmth is the same. You realize that no matter how much time passed, fermentation never stopped being magic. Fermentation needs patience, time, breath, quiet. It rewards you with depth, aroma, softness, digestibility. Both bakers nod slowly. Lesson 2. Grain matters. The medieval baker hands you a handful of whole einkorn flour, coarse, fragrant, speckled with bran. The modern baker hands you heritage flour grown just last season. They feel identical in spirit. Not refined, not stripped, not bleached, just grain crushed lovingly. You understand instantly. Bread begins long before the dough. It begins in the field, then in the mill, then in the hands that respect it. Lesson 3. Bread is community. The medieval baker gestures toward the distant glow of her communal oven. The modern baker gestures toward farmers' markets, small bakeries, neighbors sharing loaves across fences. Different settings. Same truth. Bread is meant to be shared. Its very shape invites breaking, passing, giving. Your chest warms at the thought. Bread is nourishment, yes, but it is also belonging. Lesson 4. Simple is strong. They place 2 small bowls in front of you. Flour, water, salt. Nothing else. The medieval baker folds the dough gently. The modern baker kneads with slow precision. Both loaves, when baked, are beautiful. And both remind you, bread does not need help to be good. It only needs honesty. Lesson 5. Your body recognizes real bread. The modern baker cuts a slice from her heritage loaf. The medieval baker cuts a slice from hers. Different centuries, same warmth. You take a bite of each. Your body reacts with the same grounded calm, the same steady energy, the same sense of that's how it's supposed to feel. Your shoulders drop. Your breath deepens. A faint wave of sleepiness rises, not heavy, just soothing. Bread, when made well, becomes a kind of soft medicine. Lesson 6. Waste nothing. The medieval baker shows you stale bread being turned into soups, thickeners, porridges, and remedies. The modern baker shows you breadcrumbs, croutons, bread puddings, fermented kvass. Bread lives many lives. Bread respects the effort that made it. Bread reminds us that nourishment includes gratitude. You nod, feeling a quiet sense of reverence. Lesson 7. Nature knows the rhythm. The bakers point upward toward the sky, the slow arc of the sun, the turning of seasons, the breathing of the land. Fast bread ignores nature. Slow bread works with it. The medieval baker places her hand over her heart. The modern baker mirrors her. You feel something settle inside you, a deep, stabilizing recognition. Your body still carries the memory of ancestral bread. It remembers whole grains. It remembers fermentation. It remembers slowness. It remembers warmth. It remembers community. And as you sit between 2 bakers from different eras, you realize you've been rediscovering not just bread, but something about yourself. A gentle breeze moves through the wheat. The bakers rise. Before they walk away, both of them take your hand, one warm and calloused, the other firm and steady, and place a loaf into your arms. A hybrid loaf, medieval grain, modern technique, ancient fermentation, present-day care. A loaf made of everything you've learned. They step back into their respective worlds, leaving you holding a reminder of the old truth. Bread is alive, and so are you. The sun dips behind the hillside. Shadows stretch like long exhalations. Your eyelids grow heavier. But there is one more place to go, one more truth to see, one final return of warmth and rest. A soft cliffhanger drifts in. If bread shaped civilizations, how will it guide you tonight as you fall asleep? You walk down the final path, carrying the hybrid loaf the bakers placed in your arms. The air grows warmer with each step, as if guiding you gently toward rest. The landscape softens around you. Fields dim into amber silhouettes. The horizon glows like embers, and familiar shapes begin to reappear. You're returning to the medieval village. The night is calm, hushed in that tender way evenings become when the world is winding down. A few lanterns flicker in windows. A dog curls beside a doorway. Voices drift like quiet lullabies through wooden shutters. And then you see it, the communal oven. Its domed shape glows softly, not in the roaring brightness of a fresh fire, but in the gentle, lingering warmth of embers that have burned all day. The stones radiate a deep, soothing heat, the kind of heat that seems to wrap around your entire body, urging every tight muscle to loosen. A villager waves you over with a sleepy smile. He pats the warm stones, inviting you to sit. You settle beside the oven, leaning your back against its curved side. Instantly, your breathing changes. Slow, heavy, a rhythm older than speech. The warmth sinks into you the way bread absorbed the heat of the fire, deeply, gradually, lovingly. You place the loaf in your lap. It's still warm, soft at the center, heavier than modern bread, but in a comforting way, like holding a small animal or a bundled blanket. You close your eyes for a moment. You can hear everything. The crackle of cooling stones, the faint murmur of villagers preparing for sleep, the soft wind rustling the wheat beyond the cottages. Someone sits down beside you, a familiar presence. It's the medieval baker. She doesn't speak. She simply rests her hand on the oven stones, and you mimic her gesture. The heat pulses gently into your palm. Slow, rhythmic, like a heartbeat. This was the village's warmth, its gathering place, its anchor through winters and storms and long nights. Bread wasn't just baked here. People were comforted here. Stories were told here. Children napped against these stones when days grew long. Travelers warmed their hands. Elders rested their aching joints. The oven was more than a tool. It was a refuge. And tonight, it's yours too. You take a small piece of the loaf and taste it. The flavor is soft, deep, sleepy, a blend of ancient grains, modern patience, medieval memory, a bread that bridges centuries. With each bite, your eyelids grow heavier. Your shoulders loosen. Your breath lengthens. The baker leans her head gently against the stones. You follow her example. The heat cradles your skull, melting away the last bits of tension. Someone dimly places a wool blanket around your shoulders. Another villager adds a small stick to the embers, giving the oven a faint glow. You feel entirely safe. The oven's warmth begins to blur the boundaries between waking and dreaming. Your thoughts drift like flour dust in a sunbeam, floating softly wherever the air carries them. You think of everything you've seen, the ancient grains, the stone mills, the bubbling starters, the communal rituals, the feast loaves, the modern factories, the heritage fields returning, the lessons whispered by time itself. Bread has always been a companion, a guide, a quiet, steady thread woven through human life. You rest your head more fully against the warm stone. The world dims at the edges. The warmth deepens, and as sleep begins to fold around you, a gentle final thought flickers like the last ember in the oven. You are nourished. You are warm. You can rest now. The baker rises slowly, placing a hand on your shoulder. You feel it only faintly. Then even that sensation fades. Your breath softens, slows, spreads, and the oven glows beside you like a guardian keeping watch. Hey, before you drift all the way off, just take one slow breath with me. In through the nose and out, letting your whole body loosen just a little more. You wandered so far tonight, through golden fields of ancient grain, past stone mills humming patiently, into warm kitchens where dough rose like a living heartbeat, and back again to the soft glow of a village oven. Along the way, you watch people who lived slowly, people who let time do the work that machines try to rush, people who understood, deep in their bones, that nourishment is something gentle, something patient, something shared. You stood inside bakeries where flour drifted like warm snow. You breathed in the tang of fermentation. You felt the calm weight of real bread in your hands. And even now, if you listen closely, you might still sense that quiet heartbeat of the oven beside you. The world around you may not move at medieval pace, but your breath can. Your mind can. Your dreams can. So let everything soften now. Let the stories of the night settle into warm embers inside you. Let your shoulders sink a little deeper, your jaw loosen, your thoughts drift like flour dust in a sunbeam. You are safe here. You are warm. You are fed, not just by the bread of the story, but by the calm that's been gathering in you with every slow step of this journey. Nothing else is needed now. Just breath and rest and the quiet weight of sleep beginning to take your hand. Let the warmth carry you. Let the stillness hold you. Let yourself fall gently into the softest part of the night. Sweet dreams.